Our income can go from $60,000 to $80,000, and then to $100,000, and yet your financial life barely changes. Your paycheck is bigger, your apartment might be nicer, your car might be newer, your vacations might be a little better, but somehow, your net worth doesn't seem to move very much. And this is one of the strangest financial paradoxes that almost nobody talks about, because most people assume something very simple. If you earn more money, you'll naturally become wealthier. But in reality, a hidden mechanism quietly kicks in the moment your income starts rising. Your lifestyle expands. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a little bit here and a little bit there. A slightly better place to live, a slightly nicer car, more dinners out, more subscriptions. And over time, the extra income that felt like progress slowly gets absorbed into a more expensive version of your normal life. So even though your salary might double over a decade, your financial position barely changes. In fact, some people double their income and still can't build wealth. So the real question becomes, if earning more money doesn't automatically make you rich, what actually does? Today, I'm going to show you what's actually happening when your income goes up, but your wealth doesn't. We're going to break down something called lifestyle inflation, the quiet financial pattern where every raise slowly turns into a more expensive version of your life. We'll look at why raises alone rarely translate into real wealth, even though they feel like financial progress. I'll also show you the simple math behind income versus savings rate, and why that single number matters far more than most people realize. Because this is the reason someone making $60,000 can build more wealth than someone making $150,000. And by the end of this video, you'll understand the one behavior that determines whether higher income actually creates financial freedom or just buys you a nicer lifestyle that costs more to maintain. My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about how people turn income into long-term wealth. If you're someone who feels like you're working harder, earning more, and yet your finances still don't seem to move forward as much as they should, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because once you start paying attention to how income and spending move together, you begin to notice something interesting. Two people can get the exact same raise and end up in completely different financial positions. When most people get a raise, it feels like a major financial milestone. You worked harder, you gained experience, maybe you switched jobs or negotiated a higher salary, and suddenly your paycheck is noticeably bigger than it was before. That feels like progress. And in one sense, it absolutely is. But here's the thing that almost nobody stops to think about. A raise doesn't just change your income, it changes your expectations. When your salary goes from $60,000 to $75,000, the first reaction usually isn't, "Great, I can increase my investments." The reaction is usually much more subtle. Maybe the apartment you were living in starts to feel a little small. Maybe the car you've been driving for 8 years suddenly feels outdated. Maybe vacations start shifting from budget travel to nicer hotels, and the small upgrades begin to add up. A few more dinners out each month, a couple new subscriptions, a slightly nicer phone upgrade. None of these decisions feel dramatic in the moment. In fact, each one usually feels reasonable. After all, you're earning more money now. But here's what most people don't realize. Your lifestyle is incredibly good at expanding to absorb your income. Economists have studied this pattern for decades. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey consistently shows that as income rises, spending tends to rise with it. In other words, higher income doesn't automatically translate into higher savings. It often just translates into higher spending. And this is where people get this wrong. They assume wealth is simply a function of income. They believe that once they reach a certain salary, maybe $100,000 or $150,000, wealth will start happening automatically. But wealth doesn't grow because your paycheck gets bigger. Wealth grows because the gap between what you earn and what you spend gets larger. If your income increases by $20,000, but your lifestyle quietly increases by $19,000, your financial position barely changes. Your apartment is nicer, your car might be newer, your daily life might feel more comfortable, but the actual engine that builds wealth, the amount of money you keep and invest, has barely moved. And that's why income growth and wealth growth are two completely different things. One improves your lifestyle, the other improves your future. And the moment you start separating those two ideas, the entire conversation around money begins to look very different. To understand why lifestyle inflation is so powerful, we need to look at the real engine behind wealth. And that engine isn't income, it's savings rate. Your savings rate is simply the percentage of your income that you keep and invest instead of spending. And this is where the numbers start to get interesting. Let's imagine two people. Person A earns $60,000 per year. Person B earns $120,000 per year. At first glance, it seems obvious who should become wealthier faster. Person B is making twice as much money. But now let's add one more detail. Both of them save $10,000 per year. Person A saves $10,000 from a $60,000 salary. Person B saves $10,000 from a $120,000 salary. So even though one person earns twice as much, they are both investing the exact same amount. And this is where it gets really interesting. When it comes to building wealth through investing, the market doesn't care how much you earn. It only cares how much you invest. If both people invest $10,000 per year, the growth of their portfolios will be identical. Let's walk through the math. If you invest $10,000 per year and earn an average return of 7%, after 30 years, you end up with roughly $1 million. At first glance, that number might seem surprising. $10,000 a year doesn't feel like an enormous amount of money, but here's what's actually happening behind the scenes. Every year you invest another $10,000, and the money that was already invested keeps compounding. So over time, you're no longer earning returns just on your contributions. You're earning returns on the returns. That's compounding. Now watch what happens when we look at the two people again. Person A makes $60,000 and saves $10,000. That's a savings rate of about 17%. Person B makes $120,000 and also saves $10,000. That's a savings rate of about 8%. So even though person B earns twice as much money, they're actually saving a much smaller portion of their income. And that difference has a huge impact over time, because wealth growth isn't primarily determined by income. It's determined by three things working together: how much you invest, how long that money stays invested, and the returns it earns along the way. Income can help with the first part, but it doesn't guarantee it. You can earn a very high income and save very little, or you can earn a moderate income and build a very strong savings habit. And over decades, the second person often ends up with more wealth, because time and savings rate are doing most of the heavy lifting. Income might determine the size of your paycheck, but savings rate determines how much of that paycheck actually goes to work building your future. So if lifestyle inflation quietly erodes wealth, why does it happen so consistently? Because the forces driving it are psychological, not mathematical. Most people don't sit down and say, I'm going to increase my spending this year. That's almost never how it feels. Instead, spending increases through a series of small decisions that seem completely reasonable in isolation. You get a raise, and suddenly upgrading your apartment feels justified. Your salary goes up again, and a newer car feels appropriate. Your coworkers start traveling more, and nicer vacations begin to feel normal. Over time, your lifestyle simply shifts to match the people and environments around you. Social comparison plays a huge role here. Humans naturally evaluate their situation relative to others. If everyone in your professional circle lives in a certain type of neighborhood, drives certain types of cars, or goes on certain types of trips, those things gradually become the new baseline. Not luxuries, just normal. And then there's something psychologists call hedonic adaptation. This is the tendency for people to quickly get used to improvements in their lifestyle. A bigger apartment feels exciting at first. A nicer car feels special for a few months. But eventually, those things stop feeling new, and they simply become part of everyday life. Research on income and happiness shows something similar. Studies have found that once basic needs and comfort are met, increases in income often produce smaller and smaller increases in life satisfaction. In other words, each upgrade delivers a smaller emotional return, but the cost of maintaining that upgraded lifestyle remains. And this leads to the most common justification people use when spending increases. They don't say, I'm increasing my lifestyle. They say things like, I deserve this. I worked hard. This is normal for someone at my income level. And here's the dangerous assumption. People assume that once their income reaches a certain level, wealth will start building automatically. But lifestyle inflation quietly cancels out that advantage. Every raise creates an opportunity to build wealth faster. But if spending expands at the same pace, that opportunity disappears. And the result is something you see surprisingly often. People earning more money than ever, but feeling financially stuck. Now let's shift perspective for a moment, because there's another factor that makes lifestyle inflation even more dangerous: time. Let's look at what happens if two people save the exact same amount of money every year, but one of them starts 10 years later. Person A begins investing at age 25. They invest $10,000 per year. Person B waits until age 35 to start investing, but they also invest $10,000 per year. Everything else is identical. Same yearly contribution, same investment returns. Let's assume both earn an average return of about 7%. By the time they reach age 65, Person A has invested for 40 years. Person B has invested for 30 years. That 10-year delay doesn't sound dramatic at first, but when you run the numbers, the difference becomes massive. Person A ends up with roughly $2 million. Person B ends up with about $1 million. Same annual savings, same investment strategy. The only difference was starting 10 years earlier. This changes how you look at retirement, because it shows that time is often more powerful than income. Someone earning a moderate salary who starts investing early can end up with significantly more wealth than someone earning a much higher income who waits too long to begin. And the reason is compounding. Compounding works a little like planting trees. The earlier you plant them, the more seasons they have to grow. If you plant a tree today, it has decades to expand, branch out, and multiply its growth. But if you wait 10 years before planting it, you've permanently lost 10 years of growth that can never be recovered. Investments behave the same way. Money invested earlier has more time to compound, which means the biggest advantage in building wealth often isn't earning more money. It's simply starting sooner. Now let's look at something that surprises a lot of people when they first start studying personal finance. High income does not guarantee financial security. In fact, there are plenty of people earning $150,000, $200,000, even $300,000 per year who still feel financially stretched. And the reason usually isn't taxes. It isn't bad luck. It's lifestyle structure. Imagine someone earning $150,000 per year. That sounds like a very comfortable income. But now look at what often happens as income grows. A larger house with a larger mortgage, 2 car payments instead of 1, private school tuition, more expensive vacations, higher insurance costs, more dining out, more subscriptions, and suddenly, a huge portion of that income becomes locked into fixed monthly expenses: mortgage, car payments, child care, insurance, utilities, tuition. And this is the part nobody talks about. The more fixed expenses you commit to, the less flexibility you have in your financial life. Your income might be high, but your financial freedom might actually be low. Data backs this up. Several surveys in recent years have shown that a surprisingly large percentage of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, including many households earning well over $100,000 per year. Not because their income is too small, but because their lifestyle expanded to match it. And this is where people get this wrong. They assume that earning more automatically creates financial breathing room. But if each raise simply increases the size of your financial commitments, the pressure never actually disappears. The house gets bigger, the car gets nicer, the vacations get more expensive, but the margin between income and expenses stays almost exactly the same. So instead of feeling wealthier, many high earners end up feeling trapped. They have a high income, but they also have a high-cost life that requires that income to continue. And the moment you step off that treadmill, everything starts to feel fragile. Which is why understanding lifestyle inflation isn't just about saving more money. It's about protecting your future flexibility. Now, you might be thinking, if I earn more, I'll naturally save more. And on the surface, that sounds logical. If your income doubles, saving should get easier. But the reality is that saving is primarily a behavioral habit, not an income level. If someone earns $60,000 and saves nothing, increasing their income to $120,000 doesn't automatically fix that behavior. In many cases, spending simply scales up with income. The apartment gets upgraded, the car gets replaced, vacations get nicer, and suddenly the larger paycheck is already spoken for. So the problem isn't income. It's the habit of converting extra income into extra lifestyle. And this is where the real leverage is. Because the moment someone decides that raises will increase their investments instead of their expenses, the entire trajectory of their finances changes. Now, you might also be thinking, but life should be enjoyed. And that's absolutely true. The goal of money isn't to live like a monk and never spend anything. But wealth isn't really about restriction. It's about optionality. The more financial assets you build, the more choices you create. You gain the option to work less, the option to change careers, the option to handle unexpected problems without financial stress. Lifestyle upgrades can feel good in the short term, but long-term wealth creates something much more powerful: flexibility. So how do you actually avoid lifestyle inflation while your income grows? Because the goal isn't to avoid raises. Raises are great. The goal is to make sure those raises improve your future, not just your monthly expenses. There are a few practical ways to do that. Step 1. Lock your savings rate. Before your income increases, decide what percentage of your income goes toward saving and investing. Maybe that number is 15%. Maybe it's 20%. The exact number matters less than the consistency. When your income rises, that percentage stays the same, or increases. That way every raise automatically pushes more money toward building wealth instead of expanding lifestyle. Step 2. Automate your raises. This is one of the simplest and most powerful habits you can create. Whenever your income increases, decide in advance that a portion of that raise goes directly into investments. For example, if you receive a $10,000 raise, you might automatically direct 50% of it, $5,000, into your investment accounts. The remaining portion can improve your lifestyle if you want. But now your wealth is growing every time your income grows. Step 3. Expand your lifestyle slowly. One of the easiest ways to avoid lifestyle inflation is to introduce a delay. When your income increases, Don't immediately upgrade your lifestyle. Wait 6 months or even 12 months. During that time, keep your expenses roughly the same and allow the additional income to build savings. Often you'll discover that the upgrade you thought you needed doesn't actually matter as much anymore. Step 4. Track your net worth, not just your income. Income is easy to focus on because it's visible. You see it on every paycheck. But net worth tells a much more important story. It shows whether your financial position is actually improving. When you start tracking your net worth over time, investments, savings, and assets minus debt, you begin to see whether your money is building long-term freedom. Income might determine your lifestyle, but net worth determines your options. Now imagine 2 different futures. In the first one, your income keeps increasing over time. You get raises, maybe you change jobs, maybe your career progresses faster than expected. But each time your income grows, your lifestyle grows with it. The apartment gets bigger, the car gets nicer, vacations become more expensive, monthly expenses quietly rise year after year, and even though your income is higher than it used to be, the financial pressure never really disappears. You still need that paycheck to support the life you've built. The treadmill just moves a little faster, but there's another path. In the second future, your income also increases. You still get raises, you still improve your lifestyle in some ways, but each raise also increases your savings. Your investments start growing faster. Your net worth begins compounding year after year. And slowly something very important begins to change. Work becomes more optional. You gain flexibility. You gain the ability to make decisions based on what you want to do, not just what you need to do to maintain your income. That's the real power of controlling lifestyle inflation. Not restriction, freedom. So I'm curious about something. Comment your current savings rate below, and I'll help you estimate how it might affect your timeline to financial independence. My name is John, and I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for educational purposes only. Always do your own research and make financial decisions based on your individual situation.